Je sais la fin, cherche la fin, dans la nuit, dans la nuit.
You all know Emmy Award-winning Sean Callery, the composer for many shows, but who began on the show La Femme in 1997. Sorry. All right.
Hello.
Along with Sean today, we have the prolific pilot director of the show, Mr. John Cassar. And the showrunner of season 4, Mr. Peter Lenkoff, who has gone on to give us so many wonderful hours of television on CBS. And we are here to welcome you all to ReCon Toronto 2017. And we're going to tell you a little bit about our experiences with the show, and thank you for being here. Hello, ReCon Toronto 2017. We're so happy to be here in spirit and in video. I'm sorry we can't be there in person, but we're extremely happy that this event is happening. The four of us in this room all really had our careers begin on La Femme Nikita. It really was a launching point to the following 20 years of basically nonstop work for all of us. So it's an extremely important show for us, and what made it so great was the commitment of you guys, the fans. I mean, it was the first time I had ever experienced that kind of, just extreme, like there was no line between what was happening on film and what people were feeling is real. I mean, the relationship between Peter and Roy, as you know, was really magical. But let's just go around the room, and I'm just going to talk to these guys and sort of ask them sort of how they got involved in their sort of early experiences with the show. Let's just start with you, Sean. Sean, I met through Mark Snow, who was the composer on X-Files and did the theme, but couldn't do the show. So he said, let's have Sean give it a shot.
He wanted me to do the, Mark introduced me to Joel, and Joel was, I had no episodic writing experience whatsoever, so he was a little leery, and Mark agreed to look over the first, few episodes with me. And when Joel heard the first score, he threw it out. He said it was terrible. he just there was.
I didn't use the word terrible.
He didn't terrible. He just said horrible. Horrible. He just said, I'm not sure this is going to work. That was the diplomatic part of it.
As they would say in the South, bless his heart.
Bless his heart. But there was some DNA of the show there. There were a couple of thematic ideas, and what was happening was I was being too complicated. And my favorite part of the show after all these years is, even now, like even last year, I was still playing the love theme from that show, Michael and Nikita's love theme, which is one of the themes that has a really dark romantic quality to it.
And that's what episode did that come in on? That wasn't at the beginning.
No, you were very leery about the relationship paying off. So you had to sort of reward it a little bit, and your biggest concern about the love theme is that you didn't want to pay it off. You didn't want it to join them too much. So we were able to introduce it just a little bit. I think it was halfway through season 1, mm-hmm. and not a whole lot. You're like, okay, that's it.
But it was so haunting.
Yeah, it was haunting, and you let us do it, and not a lot of shows allow that kind of rich melody. So even today, so it was that was fantastic. So that's my biggest story.
My point of view on that is that I came to Sean's apartment in West Los Angeles to listen to the first score.
Right.
And it was equipment on the floor. We had to move papers out of the couch, and I sat down and hunkered in. And he said, "Well, I have some food for you." And he came and he had some peanuts that he bought at the car wash that he served up. Well, needless to say, Well, Sean, after a couple years after that, got married to Debbie, and we had a
Now we can, yeah.
we had a playback here, and Debbie had heard that story.
Yeah.
So it was basically an 8-course French cuisine meal every time we had
That
a
was the
playback.
last time. That was the last time you ate poorly on that premises.
We literally went to the car wash.
Yeah, that's great.
Uh,
We didn't know what we were doing. That's the most fun about the shows. We don't know what we were doing.
That was
And-
4 Emmys ago. Anyway, John came onto the show. We were shooting in Toronto, and we were just talking about it. Why don't you tell them about the
Well,
Boards of
amazingly enough,
Recognition?
it's Baywatch. I don't know what else to say, but Baywatch. And Baywatch got me because I worked with a producer there, Maurice Hurley, that knew.
That worked with me on Miami Vice
That's
and
right.
Equalizer.
And so, and I'd done Baywatch Nights. I didn't even do Baywatch. I did like the secondary Baywatch Nights, which at the time was, they did it actually, this is what I loved. They were such a family unit, Doug Schwartz and the guys. They just wanted to keep everyone working. So they had Baywatch, and then instead of letting all the crew go, they just invented this other show. And this particular season was Lifeguard Fights the Paranormal, because X-Files was on. And so they brought me in because I'd done some kung fu and some mystical elements and
Which Hurley
stuff.
did as
And
well.
I'll never forget getting on the show saying, "Oh, this is okay, this is good. So what's your effects budget?" And they were like, "Well, we don't really have one." I'm like, "So what are you gonna do with the paranormal? We're gonna go to the monster house and pick one every week." That was
Oh
their,
my
this
God.
was the plan. But anyways, so Maurice knew Joel, and then I was on some kind of short list, I guess. I know Jerry Ciccariti, I think, was
No, I have a list of
original-
directors
yeah,
that,
one of
that
the
I should
original-
look at. That I should
Yeah.
look at for the pilot. And John's name was on with Jerry Ciccariti, who's continued to do well, and Kerry Scoglin,
That's
who
right.
now does
Who did the
Homeland,
other second one.
and a bunch of stuff. And John's name was on the list, and he was just another name on the list. I get a call from Hurley, goes, "John Cassar's your guy." And we met, and I met all the directors, and they all did a good job, but John was really standout for us. And how many episodes did you do?
I did 14, but I did every year. Every year I did the first one.
Right.
I remember that. So it was kind of before producer directors, really. It was
Yes.
kind of this
No, we didn't-
weird hybrid of
we
a
didn't-
producer director.
We didn't have you on.
That's right. I
full-time
came
just-
and did the first couple every year, and sometimes I did the finale, but not that
Right.
much. It was mostly the first ones. It was your idea, which I thought was really interesting, to set it again every year. It was almost like doing a pilot and saying to all the other directors and the actors, here's our plan
and,
for the
and
year.
we did that with
So
Rocco
I
Mateo,
did
and
that.
reset the
That's
look,
right, with Rocco
and
who
redo it.
We still work with. I still work with Rocco and the Kennedys. He's
Right.
one of my favorite production designers.
Did
And
you
so
only
that's how
do
it started.
14 episodes?
In total, yeah, because it was really,
Yeah,
two-
you
For
do
some
two in the
reason, it
beginning
seems
and two
like
in the
seems
end.
There's
like
so
more,
many
but it
more. Your
wasn't-
name
it
is so
wasn't.
associated
I think
with the
that
show.
that's all it was. Well, I don't know the exact number. I'll have to look up IMDb, but it was because it was 3 a year, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I'll
a
check
year.
right now.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 a year. It wasn't that many, but always the first one. I remember
Yeah.
that. I virtually did the
You,
first
you
one.
would
every
you would
season.
reset. It was almost
I
like
would do
a
set the tone every
pilot
season.
Set the
light.
tone of the
Yeah,
tone of the
set the
season.
tone of it every year. And then the pilot, that was that's what we could talk about because that's where it all started.
Right.
I still think it's it's the best pilot I've ever done, but it's just such a unique pilot for television.
I was thinking about how that kind of casting you don't see on TV is, and even with cable. I mean, it was so raw.
Totally wrong.
Roy
Yeah.
and Peter are just
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
what you expect
Yeah.
in a way. I mean, they're both gorgeous and they have the look, but there was something. I mean, when Peter came in to do the audition, she was like crawling on the floor. She was
Okay.
like an animal. I mean, but in a really alluring, amazing way, and getting
Raw,
this,
like
yeah,
so raw.
raw. And
Yeah.
so was Roy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was Roy. So Peter came on to run season 4 with our dearly departed friend Larry Herzog, and those guys did an amazing job in season 4. And Bob and I I don't even think we wrote an episode. We may have written one or something just to.
I think we may have written the first one.
Yeah, and I'm sure
season
you
4, yeah.
rewrote it and screwed it up completely, but that's okay.
That's very possible.
No, they did an awesome job. And Peter came to me through Andy Horn, right?
Andy Horn, yeah.
Over at Warner Brothers, he said, we have a writer who were you on the line there? What was your relationship with Andy?
No, I think I think Demolition Man was a few years before that, and then I was doing some rewrites for Warner Brothers on movies. And Andy, I don't even remember how I met Andy, but Andy was trying to get into the movie business also at that time.
Well, he
And
was
I
at
think-
Warner's.
Yeah, but he was in TV, and I think he was trying to get into movies also.
Oh, I see.
And I think we met that way, and he asked me if if I had ever seen La Femme Nikita, and it was one of my favorite movies, so I followed the series as well. And it was in season 3 that he introduced me to you, and
And I had worked with Larry Herzog on a show called Nowhere Man, and so I made that a marriage, and that could go either very well or very poorly. And I thought it went amazing in terms of.
Well, we had a lot of similarity. We both like cigars and bacon cheeseburgers, so
Right.
it was a
and
marriage
starting
made
at 8 in the
heaven.
morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember actually, because I really came out on the 3rd season. I did.
Well, you did a
I
couple
remember I
before
went
that.
to Toronto and I saw you for the first time, and I knew you were the director because you were all in black. Like you came in, you were
So
dressed
you
all
took
black.
that over now.
I didn't even. I just walked in and I saw a guy dressed in black, and I
That's
knew you
the
were
guy.
the director. And I knew that you'd make it in Los Angeles because I said you already got the word right down. So I remember that.
Great stuff.
I still remember the first time I met you all in black. I said that's got to be the director because I was so used to sort of the American cliche of the director that you stood out because nobody dressed. I remember a couple other directors were very well dressed, wore suits, which was also there was.
That was at Universal in the 80s. They
Oh,
used to
really?
do that. I remember when.
Well,
they
if
did
you remember,
Michael Myers.
everyone wore black on Nikita all the time.
Yes, but you,
But the
you,
general
That's right.
wardrobe.
That was
but
the
you
word.
stood out behind the camera. But I remember I remember when Andy introduced me to you and I went in and I pitched and I wrote a script and I submitted it and I didn't hear anything. But then I got a call. So usually you hear something, and if you hear something, it's good or bad. But I didn't hear anything, and I got a call about coming in, and I thought that was a good sign, because at least going in, seeing you face to face was probably a good sign. Because you could have just told me it was crap over the phone. But I remember I was waiting. You were late because I remember this distinctly. I remember I was waiting. You were late. You walked in. You walked in. I'm going to say something. I'm about to say something. You're preempting my saying something nice. So I remember I was sitting there in that lobby with Chris Haynes sitting there answering phones. You walked in. You didn't even make eye contact, but you were singing. Have I told you how much I love you?
Have I told you lately that I love you?
Yes, and you were singing that. You walked right by me. And I don't even know if you were singing it to me, if you were singing it to yourself.
Of course I was.
But I took it as
Look at that face. Come on.
I took it as if you were singing it to me. And I felt, so I finally was able to breathe and I walked in. I said, I must have done a great job. And you said, sit down, I got some notes. And you said, I don't have any notes till page 1. And I sunk right back into my despair where I was sitting in that lobby before you walked in.
Before I was singing?
Yeah, before you were singing.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of really great memories. And what was great about that show is also it's a small shop, which was great, which you really got to spend time with you and time with Bob, which was rare because as a new writer on a show, you rarely get to spend a lot of time with the boss.
And then with Larry, who was like a master of telling stories. It's heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. It feels like yesterday.
I have like tears.
Seriously.
It's so beautiful.
That's her wandering around her apartment.
That's
Remember
right.
shooting that
That's
scene?
when she was doing it. And then when Michael and Nikita started bonding, we had the.
The love scene on the boat.
Yeah, that's it. Season 2.
That's the love scene on the boat, season 2. Standing naked in the moonlight. That's what it was.
Did you shoot this?
Yeah.
So it goes on and on, but you get the idea.
Wow.
So we had some, and then the operations theme was really simple. It was. And I had done.
Did Madeline have a theme?
She did with no, she didn't really have a. She had specialized boutique episodes, but one time her and operations. I don't know if you remember this. They got involved a little bit romantically and they danced.
Yeah.
And we had a music supervisor, Blaine Johnson, the late great Blaine Johnson. And when they did a flashback episode, he used a recording artist. I'm almost certain this is the case. He used Diana Krall before she was famous. And then when they did the flashback episode, we had to do another song because she was
She'd
too.
already
You
got
could
there.
afford her.
She had already. It was already over. She was already on. So it was. Anyway, yeah. But Madeline had little boutique stories, so we had little melodies.
Did you have a kind of go-to action thing that you would repeat?
Uh,
Was there like
I'd have to look.
a Nikita, nothing that comes?
I mean,
Were there any other strains? Like
yes.
section
But
one?
remember what was so cool, Joel, is that all our early action were like
Were with
needle
music.
drops.
Yeah,
They were
needle
like-
drops,
sorts,
and there were
Right.
beats, and
It
we were
was
kind of
so
like
different than anything else
Iggy
out
Pop.
there.
and that
Iggy Pop.
and those
the
were kind of-
first episode.
that was kind of the harbinger of the 24 idea, where
Yeah.
you were kind of playing over things over time. I mean, like who would have known this? Because it was 5 years before I would even read a note of 24.
Right.
But the action sequences were kind of playing through
right.
each other, and they became almost like videos,
Little Rock videos.
Little Rock videos, but they were done so well. They were, and each one was always different, So.
All right, go out on this segment on just a little bit more of the Michael and Nikita thing, and then we'll cut it. Okay, so we want to talk a little bit now about how important the fans were to the experience of the show for us, and how it was really the beginning of online fandom. I know that Larry Herzog was one of the very, very first guys to talk to fans on shows directly. He did it on Nowhere Man, which was about 2 years before, but you might be able to talk a little. In fact, Larry met his wife.
Through one of the fan sites.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was such a pioneer with that. I mean, nowadays it's so common practice for showrunners
I mean, you live
to be,
tweet every show.
to be talking to, the audience out there, and Larry. There was Larry's Ladies. There was one site.
Yeah, I
There was
remember that.
even Chris Hain, the assistant, had Hain's Hussies.
Hain's
There was
Hussies.
Linkoff's Lair.
That's
There was all
funny.
these like boutique fan sites that the fans had created for the show, and you would go on each individually, and you'd get to talk to Chris, who would give you behind the scenes of what's happening in the writer's office. You talk to Larry, who was very sort of like open to the fans and very welcoming. And it was a real behind the scenes sort of like interaction with the showrunners, which is now commonplace. So I think Larry really, when I
Was a
look at it,
vanguard.
was really like a pioneer in that. And because the internet was so new 20 years ago, it was
Really
a lot of people weren't even using it. I think people were in fear of it, but Larry embraced it and knew it was sort of like cutting edge in a way to sort of like have TV evolve and the fans sort of evolve
Be a
with
real
it.
part of the experience.
Yeah.
And you were involved in the early conventions.
Yeah, well, I used to run one.
For charity.
The charity that we used to do, and then the Nikita people were always the backbone of that charity. But I'll never forget my first really interaction with fans at one of those events where, they loved the show so much, and I remember them saying, well, we have some questions, and I couldn't have been prouder. I was like, I was there, sure, of course, I have all the answers. And they asked me about, it was something like with Nikita and Michael, and they were touching, but it was such a close-up, you couldn't tell the hand and whose hand it was, and I went,
I have no
I
idea.
have no idea what you're talking about. But to them, the answer to that question meant so much.
Yes.
Because they were so invested in
It
the
was
show.
so subtle.
It was
the
so
relationship
subtle,
was so moment
And
by
so
moment.
I'll always remember that moment. Is like, this is where the fans, you have to respect them in a way that you thought you did before. It was just people watching
Well, you
TV.
realize you've tapped
you
into
know,
something, and what we tapped into was
completely
this
different.
really elusive relationship.
That's exactly right.
And I'm sure that sort of helped you even compose the theme for them.
Well-
and it took a while to identify it.
Yeah, I mean, when I went to the first convention and there was a Q&A, someone said, "Hey, I noticed in season 2 you used Michael and Nikita's theme over this moment in the show, like, and it was like, were you harkening back to their,
That's right.
Yes.
they're really, and it was interesting. They were picking up on some intuition that I wasn't even conscious of,
Right.
Which was fascinating. And the most other fascinating thing about the conventions that I remember is they had an area devoted to fan fiction. So they actually wrote stories.
Right,
They actually
yeah.
wrote
Oh, yeah.
like really involved tales about these characters, and they were quite good.
Yeah.
They were quite good. So I learned to really I loved the fans. That was the first time I ever did a soundtrack for anything
Right.
I ever worked on, and it was
you
really
used to get
it was
great
really,
feedback on the soundtrack.
and it was at the encouragement of the fans. Really, that's like I mean,
Yeah,
you know, making TV
they
soundtracks.
wanted it. They wanted a soundtrack.
Yeah.
Was
they did.
Blaine's music in the soundtrack? or
No, that was
just
just
you?
way
It was
just
So this was just your
it was
original
just me.
material.
And it took me
Awesome.
forever to get the kind of permission to do it because there was all kinds of legal issues about
But
it.
there was more than one, right? We did 2 at least. I remember 2 for sure.
You know?
Did you do 2?
No, I think I only did one. I did
Just
two
the
24s, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
2.
one.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
the
2
224s. That's right.
But no, the Keto one was
Just the one, yeah.
just the one. But it was, and I performed it since then in concerts. You know,
Yeah.
people still know the show.
We're gonna go around and talk a little bit about kind of significant moments for us on the show, creatively, things that sparked us or sort of identified for us what targets we were trying to hit. I think John and I, we were just talking previously, probably sparked to the same thing, which was the very first episode we shot, which is not the first episode aired, called Love. And it was Michael and Nikita pretending to be lovers, going undercover with Tobin Bell,
Right.
who later became a big 24 villain, and having to prove to him that these two people were in love. So that sort of was a perfect encapsulation of what we were trying to do on the show. Like, feed this relationship, but it's kind of a meta relationship. It's not really real, it's sort of
More professional.
playing out as a relationship, but it wasn't really happening, but it really was.
That's right.
So it was like 3
So many
different
layers.
things going on.
Yeah.
And there was a scene where the two of them were dancing at Tobin Bell's place, and there was no dialogue, it was just the two of them looking at each other, and Tobin Bell was standing off screen next to me, and he said, "That is magic." And it was dead on. I remember Quentin Tarantino was talking about when he was shooting the John Travolta dancing scene, he said, for some reason it was just locked in, and they just could have spent 10 hours
Doing that.
and it was just alive. And it was like a mini version of that. It was like, okay, this is our show. These two people pretending to be in love and yet really are in love, but really
They're
can't
not
be
in
in
love.
love, is everything that we need to try to repeat in the show.
And then the fact that if they slip up, they're dead.
Right.
That's the other thing. It was a relationship that had you
so
know,
much consequence.
so much consequence. It wasn't just like, oh, we break up.
Right.
I mean, if Tobin Bell at that moment, you know, the villain realized they weren't really married, they were both dead.
They were both dead.
So the
So they
stakes
really
were
had to
always,
sell it.
The stakes were so high.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because people think it's easy. You do that first episode and that, oh, you've hired everybody, you know the look and everything's in place.
don't know
But
anything.
you're looking for those moments. You're looking for those scenes and those moments where you can look at each other and go, wait, we got something here.
Right.
This is and that was definitely that moment.
That was
I'll never forget that. And it wasn't in the first episode because we did do episode 3 first,
Right.
which was an interesting, more of a technical thing to do just to get
It
your
was
feet
so
wet.
raw, but the
it
rawness
was-
of that episode,
we knew it right
kind
away.
of, it's still,
Yeah. And then I think it
one of my
helped us
favorites.
then I think it helped us make a better pilot.
right,
Because then we kind of knew what that was already, so it was easier
kind of
to
reverse engineered it.
kind of reverse engineered it, which first time I'd done that, I think to this day I still think it's a brilliant idea. Not all shows work that way systematically because sometimes it's just a pilot.
Right.
But when you know you have an order, it's a great
To
way
shake out a crew and
to
a
shake out a
cast
crew and
everyone.
the look and everything. I mean, we made a million decisions off that first show as to how we were going to move forward, including I think you and what the sound of it was.
So Sean, when you talked about how I gave you a bunch of notes and
Yeah.
and then when you finally, what he didn't tell, the second part of that story is that 3 days later I came back and it was like note perfect.
Yeah.
So where did you lock in? I mean, obviously not then because it was too
Yeah.
early in the.
Not to make this a master class in how to be a good showrunner, but you really, but what you did is you kind of set up the parameters of the sandbox and said, look, these are the things that I'm liking, these are the things I'm connecting with, and then you kind of step back, and the fact that you didn't try to micromanage it and let me sort of find the thing myself is what honestly built the confidence in to kind of experiment and take it to the next level as the show grew. And you guys were just talking about that episode Love. I was thinking about, I think it was the end of season 322, and all I remember about it is Michael and Nikita in lab coats and glasses, and they were like, walking in some sort of Toronto lab or whatever. But the last 5 minutes of the show, there's a scene where Michael is trying to basically be with her, and she's been drugged in a way that she can't do it. She keeps looking away from it. And you filmed something for like, I think did you direct
No, I don't think I did.
Well, anyway, it was like 3 or 4 minutes, at least 2 or 3 minutes of him trying to get her to see, and it was heartbreaking. And then she says, "You got to go," and then it was all over, and I did this big chord crescendo at the end of it, and then there was this big empty spot at the end, and you at the very end of the show said, "There's a little hole there. Let's put a line there. Let's have Roy say something." And at the last minute, you decided he was going to say, "This won't stand," or "I'm not going to let this happen." And that was the cliffhanger. That was the end of season 3.
I won't let them do this.
But we discovered those things so spontaneously, just those, and that's what made the show really fun. It never got tired in that way. You were always looking for the...
So Peter, it's a different experience for you coming in season 4, where so much of it's established and so much of the relationship has been played out in a million different ways. I mean, did you and Larry, when you sat down to kind of plot out the seasons, go, let's regenerate in this direction or that direction, or were you just looking to keep
Be
this?
curators of the.
No, but I'm just saying, did you?
You always bring your own.
By season 4, you almost have to reinvent the show a little bit.
Yeah, I think part of that was just trying to tell, trying to like feel like the stories are fresh, and I remember that end because I think I was involved in that episode, which was they were trying to brainwash her so
That's right.
she'd be out of love with Michael.
Yeah.
And
That's it.
and
Did you write that episode?
Yeah.
I think I did.
It was so good. It was such a...
Yeah,
so
because I remember at the end, for some reason, I don't know why, but something happened and I went home for the weekend. I was asked to write the last episode really quickly, but I remember that being the end, which is trying to brainwash. But I remember, one of the really great highlights of season 4 was you got to direct an episode. I got to write an episode that you directed.
That's right.
And that was
Before I Sleep or something.
yeah. Before I Sleep, that was.
All right.
Was that the one that you directed?
I directed them. It's called
Yeah.
Before I Sleep.
So
Started
free.
with the door.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot the
The
titles.
classic
The titles were always the number of.
I Feel Free. Was the
Season of the year.
song we used.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, are you responsible for the rise of Mick Stoppel? Because that was...
No, that was Joel. I think.
Carlo.
Carlo.
Yeah, that was great.
Right.
Another great.
That he was amazing.
Just a great color.
But you guys took him into new places. I mean,
You did.
Yes, he was great.
they just didn't he become like the head of section 1 or something?
Yeah, he
I mean,
became way bigger than I think we ever imagined. Because he started as the neighbor, wasn't he? Like the neighbor, he was
No.
he was the guy that just came by and
I don't know what
He was
did.
the
something
he
like
was the
that.
goofy neighbor who
Yeah,
ultimately
he's the
turned
neighbor.
out that he was there to spy on
That's
Nikita
right.
to make sure that she
Yeah.
was in check.
But he gave us
Which
a
was
great
great.
comedy element, which the show didn't have a
Yes.
lot of, obviously. for
No, because he was
obvious
always
reasons.
hitting on her.
Yeah,
It
he was
was
always
great.
hitting
And
on
we
her.
sort of used that on with Chloe in 24.
And that's right.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
That's exactly
it was
right.
a way to find
Yeah.
a really offbeat character to sort of temper all the kind of heaviness that's
right.
going
It was
around.
so heavy.
And he was so good at that.
And then he ended up as her husband on 24. The same actor ended up as Chloe's husband.
Okay, we're going to just kind of go around and give some closing thoughts. I mean, between takes here, we're just dredging up. We could talk about this forever, but obviously we don't have the time, nor do you. But why don't we just start with you, Peter, and just sort of give sort of a general sense of your experience in your relationship. I know that they're very curious about the actors, and maybe if there's anything with Roy and Peta that you want to talk about, or just what it was like being in the editing room and editing them. And being
Yeah,
part
it was
of
great. I mean, I have such great fond memories of the show. And you were talking about the convention. I remember going to a convention and somebody had given me a pair of boxer shorts with La Femme logo on it and my name on it. And it was like when I moved about 5 years ago, I found them again, and I realized like what a great experience this was. Like this was a show because you work on you could go through your whole career and work on shows and never have this kind of fan
Yeah.
experience where there's people watching, that these were people that would drive by. You guys would drive by the lot in Mississauga and an office building. There was nothing out there other than an office and address, and they would drive by just to see where the show was shooting. and that's a commitment that you may see once in your career, and it's and that's one of the big fond memories I take away was really the fans and how much they love the show. And anywhere you went in the world, if you said you worked on La Femme Nikita, people knew the show. It was an international hit, and it made you feel good working on that show.
And you got free underwear.
And I got a pair of free boxer shorts, which I got to find because I can actually use them now. And another thing is, like, we got to work with some great actors who, you know, we ended up, I know all of us have worked with again, and I remember I tried years ago.
Who have you used from the show?
Well, Gene I've used
Gene
a couple
Blake,
times, yeah, and Carlo Rhoda, who was great. I worked with him, and I tried to get Peta. The schedule didn't work out, but it was a few years ago. Tried to get her to Hawaii, but for some reason the schedule didn't work out. It just, you know, Roy. I mean, Roy. You know, if he would be willing to leave Canada, I would love to have him someday.
That's a shout out.
Yeah. Anytime. I mean, I think we tried a couple times. I think he's committed to making Canada a better place.
We talked about it on 24.
Yeah.
We talked about
he was great.
doing a 24.
He was so good. I mean, you know, again, like, it was such a great experience for me. I came into the show late, but it was a great experience. Loved it.
It was such an important part of it. John, tell me.
Well, I guess for me, it's just it's the undeniable connection to 24. You know, between you and I working again on 24, and I always compare it to like 24 Junior. It really was the start. I mean,
it was
section
the
became
training ground.
CTU. There's a lot of similarities to me that it always felt like, and then I got to meet you for the first time, work with you, and then worked with you. So to me, there was always that connection. And I'll never forget this. I'm not sure if I even told you this story. You came to me once and you pitched me 24. You said, we've got this idea to do this show because, you know, if you remember, Nikita was missions. It was mission after mission. And I remember you saying, we're going to do a mission that takes 24 hours in one day. It'll be just one mission as opposed to like 2 or 3 missions a week. I never forget looking at him going, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
That's what Bob said to me when I first pitched
because my vision of it was everything in real time would be so slow. Like guys sitting in front of like a house waiting for the bad guy to come out. In real time, I thought, oh my God, Nikita was like so fast.
Yeah.
I had no idea, of course, that it was going to move at the lightning speed that Joel, you know, had an idea. So to me, it's always been the connection between the two that I always go back to Nikita, and it really was the start for me. And the fact that you gave me the opportunity to do it is huge for me. And what I love about the show, and I go back to it every once in a while because I see people talking about it online, is you watch an episode now, it totally stands up. You could air that show right now on many networks and it would look just as good as everything else out there. It really was slightly ahead of its time as far as look, music, editing, everything about it was just jumped ahead.
I teach in my class. I teach a TV writer's workshop. I still use La Femme Nikita. And these kids who've never even heard of it watch it for the first time and they get obsessed. They want to, they ask you, can you download more episodes? Sean, tell me.
Well, Nikita began my professional career. That's just no other way to say it. I probably learned more each week working on that show than it was like each week was like a college education, really, you know, in terms of how we were going to try things and so forth. And it was very, to speak to your point about the community of the group, it was so great. I just found an old picture of me and Don Franks, the late great Don Franks. And there's me with a 90s goatee and a pasty skin. The skin is still the same color, but that's when I thought I looked cool. But man, I was off. And the being a part of that, even 2 years ago or last year, playing the theme for fans in Europe, down in Spain. I mean, to be on a show that has that kind of longevity of any kind is a bullseye. It's like. If you have one show in your life that does that, and I've done that, and then that teed up the ball for 24, which I don't think 24 would have come out. I don't think I could have worked on 24 had I not had the experience on Nikita. That's exactly right, and that is a cheers to you, my friend,
thank you
for sticking up for us, quite frankly.
Yep.
I mean,
well, thank you. That's wonderful. Obviously, for me, the show was amazing, but. Look, here 20 years later, and I have 3 friends who are lifelong friends. And how often do you get that? I mean, we live blocks away
You
from
guys
each
are-
other.
we really do.
You know,
It's almost ridiculous.
we've kept that alive. Again, to your point of community. I mean, it's one thing to work with a lot of talented people, but to work with talented people that you love and you love to socialize with and you love to, you know, share all that stuff with is the ultimate home run. You know, and so I think all of us enjoy the art of living as well as the art of working. You know, so that's sort of a big part of it for me. But this is a show where the actors taught us how to write the show. Roy did things Roy's way and was Michael in a way. We were talking about some of this earlier where, you know, Roy wouldn't run. He was too cool to run. And I got so mad in the first couple of dailies. It's like, the bad guys are coming. Why is he walking? Why is he so cool? And then all of a sudden I remember Bob and we just got it.
Yeah.
Because he's cool.
Yeah.
And that
He wouldn't
serves
miss.
the master. He was never flustered,
Yeah.
you know. So and then Peta just did her things her way, and we just learned to write it and create it in a way where these two people could do what they do, and it somehow worked. And that was just amazing. I want to just give a little shout out to the people who are no longer here: Don Franks, Alberta, and Blaine Johnson, who was our music supervisor, who we all loved dearly and missed dearly, and again, were just essential, integral parts of the show. I mean, you know Alberta, what she did, and you know Don. You don't know Blaine, but Blaine brought an entire point of view to the music of the show that, again, was not on TV in 1997. Indie label, cool, one-off bands that
He was ahead of
we
his
had
time.
never heard
He was
about.
absolutely ahead of his time.
You know, I remember one of my favorite scenes in the pilot was just the song at the beginning when she moved into the apartment and you panned across the sunglasses, and he found this song that's incredible.
Perfect.
I just played it for my daughter the other day, and she's a DJ up in San Luis Obispo at her college station. She flipped out over it. It's a 20-year-old song that still sounded hip
today.
and relevant. So just all those people were, you know, forever in our hearts, and you guys, the fans, are forever in our hearts. It meant everything to us. So thank you guys.